If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast, where we deep dive into the best matches in AEW history. Brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network and your host, Sam Brown. Hello and welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sam Brown. Thank you for joining me. Today, I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of the 4th season of the Match Guide, where we will be looking beyond the ropes of Tony Khan's ring to the matches, wrestlers, promotions, and movements that influenced all elite wrestling. If you enjoy the show today, you can subscribe and rate it on your podcast app of choice, support the Social Suplex podcast financially through Red Circle, and make sure you check out all of the other great shows on the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where we cover all aspects of the world of pro wrestling. We've got One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Tunnel Talk, the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast, Wrestle Art with Chris Things, Imp's AEW Adventure, and Joshying Around. And you can subscribe to the Social Suplex newsletter at socialsuplex.com/newsletter. Become part of the Social Suplex community by joining our Discord, where you can chat with the hosts of all our podcasts, as well as other wrestling fans from around the world. Links for all of these things are in the podcast description. My guest for today is one of the leading analysts in pro wrestling today. She's the brains behind the Social Suplex newsletter and one half of the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. It's Trish Spiers, and we're going to be discussing Kazuchika Okada versus Tetsuya Naito from Wrestle Kingdom 14. Trish, it's great to have you here to kick off a new season of the Match Guide. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Sam, for having me. That was far too kind. I don't know. But no, I'm really looking forward to discussing this one. You know, especially everybody I think knows that this is my favorite wrestler, and this is his culminating match of his long journey. So yeah, really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, look, I know you're British, and I know that understatement and being humble is a thing. Where in Australia, it's the same way. Tall poppy syndrome is a huge thing in this country. But I've got to give you the big wind up because I'm incredibly proud to be part of the Social Suplex, and I'm incredibly proud to see what you have done as part of it. The stuff that you're doing, particularly with that newsletter, is incredible. It's an absolute service to the internet wrestling community, a service that most of them don't deserve, I might add. You're far too good for them. You put in far too much work for them. We should be charging for them or something, but you do it for free. So yeah, look, shout outs to yourself and all of the guys that put in so much effort in the Social Suplex newsletter. The stuff that you cover, the links that you guys go to is phenomenal.
We just got an incredible team. Like, that team is just, yeah, they're fantastic. And it means that we can cover so much more than what we could if we were just a few of us. And and it is free. And that's a big point to us. It's something that we thought was important to have that sort of resource available to you without paywall. And we'll just continue to build it through 2026.
Absolutely. And as I said in the intro, you can subscribe, socialsuplex.com/newsletter. Really worth checking out, particularly if you want to get an idea of what's going on outside of the big companies. Most websites, literally all they cover is WWE, AEW, and occasionally TNA. The Social Suplex newsletter goes into exhaustive detail about promotions you have never heard of in your life. And it is really worth your time to check out. So before we get started, I really must stress, I'm it's been so awesome to see what you guys have been doing with that in the last little while. And before we get started on everything else, Trish, I just need to ask you one question. What is the word count for your notes?
Oh God, I should have saved this earlier, shouldn't I?
Well, while you scramble to find out, I was surprised last time. I take a lot of pride in doing a lot of research for this, and you were surprised that I had more words than you. So I have to find out what's your word count for your notes. Let's do a quick comparison before we get started. Mine is 2,942.
Oh God. Right. So I've separated it. So I've put some quotes. 1,000. So. Altogether, but my words are just under 2.5. So
okay, there we go. we've written a novella together by our powers combined. So look, let's get going on things. We've got a lot to cover. And look, by way of introducing things, in case you missed my kickoff episode a fortnight ago, I'm going to be doing episodes every fortnight on Monday. And I'm really looking at broadening the horizons of the match guide. So far, we've pretty much only done AEW. We did one ROH match, but that's an ROH under Tony Khan match. So really is sort of under that AEW banner. And the end of last year, I covered in the lead up to Hiroshi Tanahashi's retirement. I covered one of probably my favorite match of all time. I covered Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Kota Ibushi. And so this season, I thought it would be nice to spread our wings. It's not that there's not a lot of great AEW matches to look at and dig into. There's still some on there that I've not spoken about that happened in the first couple of years in the company. But I thought it'd be fun to look at the matches, wrestlers, promotions, and just general wrestling movements that sort of shaped All Elite Wrestling. And I felt like New Japan was the perfect place to start. Trish, this match particularly, it was immediately one that came to mind. I'll get into why that was later. But when I thought of this match, I specifically thought of you because I know how closely you followed the career of Tetsuya Naito. I knew you'd like to talk about this match and you'd have a lot to say about him. So before we get into the build and the discussion of Wrestle Kingdom 14, let's just say Tetsuya Naito. So when did you first become a fan of this guy, and what was it about him that stuck out to you?
Oh, so I was quite late. So I saw him on a show in the UK in 2015. And this guy comes out and he's got the silver mask, silver suit. And I don't know, there was just something that completely captivated me where I was like, oh, I like this guy. And it was so funny because it was at a time where he was pretty hated. Like, it was a time where he was pretty much being rejected by everyone. At the end of the show, like, they said, okay, which guy did you like watching live the most? And I was like, him. And they were like, but he sucks. And I'm like, nah, him. And that was
Did you see how cool he looked?
Yeah, I was just like, no, there's something there. And
was it the speed that he walked at? Because he's a really fast walker, this guy.
He walked a bit quicker then. He did after LIJ to come around. But no, I just I found him fascinating. I was just like, I don't know why. And sometimes that's all it is, like, and then you just kind of follow along. And that was really my gateway into watching New Japan, like, as a first call promotion, like every single kind of event week, rather than just kind of checking in for Wrestle Kingdom and the Dominion sort of thing. So yeah, I was laid in on that, but that was it. And from there on, like, he was captivating in a way to me that I didn't find many other wrestlers at the time, especially during that period. I didn't enjoy kind of WWE stuff. I wasn't into NXT Black and Gold, so New Japan was my thing, and that was the wrestler that I wanted, the character as well, that I wanted to follow. And the more you got into the story, and as soon as we got to kind of, I know we're going to talk about the Intercontinental stuff later, but as soon as we got into the bit with his relationship with the belt, and then broadening on to how that built into his relationship with LIJ, that was it. I was done. And yeah, so that's when that became, the wrestler that I look forward to watching the most, for sure.
There's like such an understated tone to him, particularly in contrast to the other sort of big dogs in New Japan. I guess of course, the biggest of the dogs in that period, Hiroshi Tanahashi. He's so unlike Tanahashi in that, like, Tanahashi is so perfectly presented. He's got the perfect hair. He's got the beautiful, colorful, flowing robes. And, he's always posing, calling out to the crowd. And Okada is very much in the vein of that. I guess Nakamura is sort of, maybe Naito is actually sort of in that vein of Nakamura, like a lot more of a laid back charisma, and a charisma of someone who doesn't really care about you. I'm not someone who could ever be accused of being cool, but you sort of know it when you see it. And that's what it is, right? Like, he's a rock star. He's, like Julian Casablancas from the Strokes. He's like, he's really good at what he does, but he's sort of he only appears to be like really half interested at times. And in that way, it's just like there's a charisma and a presence to that.
The connection with him is it's funny because you brought Tanahashi. You think back to like early Naito, if you go back and watch, the whole thing was he was going to be Tanahashi's kind of, his next in line. He was going to be that next variation of Tanahashi. He was going to be that baby face, and he wasn't. He was this bland kind of. He reminds me a lot of what we look at maybe Shota Umino in recent years. Actually, this kind
the
of
parallels.
That everyone kind of, aforementioned, believes was going to be this guy, and he's not really anything. He has no definition. And the thing is, when he becomes, the LIJ kind of Naito, the ungovernable one, the thing about him is that, he has that coolness because it's like he doesn't care, but everybody knows that he cares the most. And that's where the connection is.
Yeah. Well, let's start telling this story because we're touching on different parts of it. With the thing with these New Japan wrestlers is sometimes literally you're going back to their very first match they ever had in black trunks running to the ring with these rivalries. Like, one day we're going to talk about Tsuji and Yamura, and we're literally going to have to go back to the fact that, like, in 2019 they kept having draws, and that's going to be like, we're going to be talking for 15 years because of all of that. But but you got to find somewhere to start. And I think for this, it's probably worth talking about his ascent to the main event scene, because that's where things really start getting going. Like, he returns from Excursion. He's a young lion. He returns from Excursion in New Japan in 2010. He has like programs against guys like Nakamura, Tanahashi, Goto, the guys that are bumping around the mid-card main event scene at that. He wins some matches, he loses some matches, he even has matches against Okada and stuff. But it's in his fourth year back in 2013 that he gets the push. He wins the G1. Now, you've sort of mentioned at the time, like, what he was like. I'm not familiar with his work at that time at all. Is there anything that stands out to you in particular about what he's doing at that period? You said before that he's sort of almost the next Tanahashi, the new Tanahashi.
Well, he's like proclaiming he's the next Tanahashi, and the crowd are just, they are not going for it because he's a very, very bland babyface at the time. He's a high flyer, a bit more high flyer-ish than he was in later years, and it's just very kind of boring in a way. There's no identity to him. It's like, okay, he's a Stardust genius. What does that even mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything in his presentation. It's just he's just a guy, and he's pushing himself as being this thing. Obviously, they give him the G1 win in 2013, and the crowd just reject him. And the more he kind of pushes it, this is where the Umino thing is actually quite a good comparison.
Yeah, why is he riding a motorcycle to the ring? Oh, no, sorry, flash forward again.
Hey, them sort of wide motorcycles are a big deal in Japan. Like, there's not much space to park things there. You have these little cars. But yeah, it's like, in the same way that Umino was very much stuck last year in terms of what is my identity? Who am I? This is where Tetsuya Naito was in 2013, and the crowds did turn on him. And he had no idea how to deal with it. He couldn't deal with it in the promos. He couldn't deal with the match. He was just lost. And then obviously that culminates in Wrestle Kingdom 8 with everything that happens there.
It's a terrible, like, it'd be a really terrible place to be when you're a wrestler. You're getting the biggest push of your life, and you know, like, no one would know more than him that this is not going well. I am floundering. I'm struggling. And of course, yeah, this was going to be Naito's first Wrestle Kingdom main event after winning that G1. Okada's second Wrestle Kingdom main event, but crucially, it was the first Wrestle Kingdom main event since Wrestle Kingdom 4. This is Wrestle Kingdom 8, so we're talking four years of it, to not be headlined by Hiroshi Tanahashi. And Tanahashi was set to face Shinsuke Nakamura, another giant star, on the level of Hiroshi Tanahashi, and they were set to face each other for the IWGP Intercontinental title. And the proposed main event of Okada and Naito, as you said, Naito was floundering. The proposal was not received well by fans, so New Japan announced a fan poll where fans would get to vote on which match out of Nakamura and Tanahashi or Okada and Naito would be the main event. And Nakamura versus Tanahashi won, meaning that Naito and Okada was relegated from second from the top. That's definitely not the way that your first G1 win heading into your first Wrestle Kingdom main event is meant to go. Okada seems to escape on this, though. Why does Okada seem to just get off scot-free on this and everyone pins it on Naito?
I guess the crowd weren't really rejecting Okada in the same way. So I guess that's why it gets pinned on Naito. And then obviously it becomes so much part of Naito's story that you can kind of build into it. And Okada was very swiftly back in Tokyo Dome main events afterwards, whereas Naito wasn't. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing that it's just like this combination of guys wasn't enough. But we only ever talk about Naito. But it's a hard one as well, because you want to push. You look at it's a really interesting time to look at this when you look at the current New Japan roster and the way they're trying to push people as well. Is that you're trying to push new guys at the top. You're trying to breed this kind of new generation into the top of the company, and yet you still got these huge stars on the other side. And having the combination of kind of old versus new in this construct, people went for what they were familiar with. What they were already invested in. And it tells you how difficult it can be sometimes to get people over the top to the point of recognition where they're willing to see something like this as a Tokyo Dome main event.
And, it's funny, I was equally as critical of Gato as anyone for how slow he was to push the new guys. The guys like Tsuji, like Umino. But this is probably something he thinks back to and being like, I can't do it too early. Doing it too early can be as bad as doing it too late. Like if I do it too early and it flounders, this derailed Naito's career for years. So this is the start of 2014, and it really isn't until 2015 where Naito manages to get his career back on track. 12, 18 months later, he's in a it's a really good example of turning something negative into a positive. He's licking his wounds from what is a very chastening experience, and he's still not getting that backing from the crowd. But while he's on tour with CMLL in 2015, he's teaming with La Sombra, the now Andrade El Idolo, in the faction Los Ingobernables, the Ungovernables. And then Naito would sort of change up his character, flip up his character. And where he was that babyface, as you said, he would come back to create his own spin-off, Los Ingobernables de Japan, and introduce this new version of his character that did not care and sort of rejected the crowd the way that they had rejected him. How would you describe this character that Naito became? Because this is the character that you fell in love with. This is the character that everyone fell in love with.
Yeah, so you described quite a lot of parts of it, but it goes back to he doesn't care, but everybody knows he does. And that's the kind of energy that they go with. And then you surround him with this band of essentially misfits. These characters that are so much different looking from your Tanahashis and your Gotos and everyone that's kind of cut this is pure wrestler. And now you've got an Evil, and then you get a Bushi, and then Bushi rather than Ibushi, the way I say that. It's quite funny on the crossover. And then you have Sanada coming in at Invasion Attack. And then you round it off when you get Hiromu, who's this crazy ball of energy. And you have this group that looks so different to everything else in New Japan. and the bonds between them become part of the story of who Naito is. And everything of that put together is what makes him kind of this cool character that people associate with. And it was so kind of different because, I mean, you had your traditional kind of you know foreign heel group with the Bullet Club and stuff, but they were they cool? I don't know. Maybe in some ways they were, but they weren't in this sense. And there wasn't that association and that story and that sort of thing. And for a lot of those, I don't know if they had the charisma. There you go. That will get me in trouble, won't it? That Naito did in being able to pull this off, because I don't think it works if he just plays kind of bland heel, you know, with big group. It comes off because he's willing to play this character, where it's like with the kind of the carelessness and things. And it's funny, isn't it? Because from having been so rejected just a couple years ago, like he comes back into this character, and this character is similar to kind of Azara in the last year. Like people just attach to it straight away, like bang, like, oh, this guy's cool. And even Osaka, who like they hold on, they hold on to like, no, we still want to hate this guy for as long as they can before they kind of eventually kind of give in, because it's just that different energy. And even the way he does so when he first comes back, you know, he tries to do little things with him and it's, you know, the idea is to get him. He doesn't always work that way, but he'll slow the matches down. You know, we're not going full strong style. We're not going 100 miles an hour all the time. I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to go to the outside for a bit. I'm going to do these things. So it's like the pace changes. Everything's different about it. And yeah, you've got the interference elements they use with LIJ at the start when they're heels. But yeah, it's just they flip kind of all the conventions of who Naito was, and they flip kind of conventions of what you expected from that kind of New Japan match, and they make that kind of part of him. And yeah, and then obviously, you know, not just like his reversion, as he says, of his character, but the fact that he's kind of bilingual and he's kind of incorporating all that and into his moveset and all that sort of thing as well, really helps to kind of set him apart from the rest of the roster.
The thing that just I can't get out of my head now, Trish, is you mentioned you're comparing Los Ingobernables to Bullet Club, and you know you said was the Bullet Club cool?
This is a war,
and there's a lot of there's a lot of bald-headed guys with beards, and I say that as B1, who wear black shirts that think the Bullet Club was very, very cool. And I think I'm just thinking music comparisons right now, because I cannot get out of my mind the comparison between Naito and Los Ingobernables and Julian Casablancas and the Strokes. For some reason, it just fits for me in the way, like the style that they were, how radically different they were, the attitude, but how it just felt like they're dripping with coolness. Like, you know, there's the story of Kate Moss, you know, the model of the time at the prime of her career, trying to call and get tickets to a Strokes concert and wants to get 18 tickets, and they tell her she can have 3. And there's just something like that's so awesome about that. And, you know, like, but they never played stadiums like, say, the Foo Fighters. And in some ways, like, I don't know, I'm drawn to that comparison of the Bullet Club being like, you know, the big stadium rock outfit that, you know, is making money hand over fist and everything, but they don't have, they're not as cool as the Strokes, who are, you know, playing maybe an arena or a little bar, but in front of the trendiest crowd. And that I don't know, for some reason, my mind is just is going to that comparison, but that's the vibe that I get from Naito and Los Ingobernables at that point. Like, just they are just dripping with everything you want to be, and that charisma, but they're different to what is around at the time, as you know, the Strokes were different, kind of revolutionizing, bringing indie rock into a scene that was dominated by nu metal at the time. So let's talk about let's move on from my pet topic of music and wrestling, and move on to the Intercontinental Championship, because that's like kind of really where you see this attitude catalyzed. So he wins, you know, Naito actually does win the IWGP Heavyweight Championship in 2016. He beats Okada for it, but he loses it pretty soon afterwards. And it's the Intercontinental title that he wins and takes and just openly despises. Trish, talk to me about the things that Naito did to the Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah, so he has the IWGP Winner Invasion Attack, which is worth a watch because the crowd is just insanely behind him and they do everything to try and get him booed, and it does not work. They kind of rectify it by Dominion when they do the no LIJ involved match, but it's like, that crowd is just phenomenal. But then, yeah, so he wins the Intercontinental, we won't mention who from, and he does not want this thing. This thing represents every single thing that's kind of held him back in his career. It's the reason that he is this version, this reversion, as he likes to say, of Tetsuya Naito. And he decides that, seeing as it destroyed his career, he's going to destroy it. And he throws it against stairs, he throws it on the floor, he stabs on it. He does everything like that. In fact, the most iconic image is after he wins it, where they put it in his hands and he just throws it up in the air and leaves it behind and walks out. And that's probably one of the most iconic Naito images ever, the noise of the crowd when he does so. He tries to pay for it for his meals at restaurants. He's like, yeah, you can just have it. He leaves this thing just like the buttons are just ruined off, like it's completely like destroyed.
He drags it to the ring, drags it along the floor.
Yeah, he's not going to hold it up, so he just like it's like a drape. He just like, yeah, it can just go all across the thing. And it's quite funny because the only person that treats it with any respect in LRJ is Hiromu, who's like, no, Belt-san, I can speak to it and that sort of thing. And Naito's kind of intrigued, but sometimes I just think he's just like, what are you doing now? Like I told my rabbits, he's like, he talks to Hiromu, like, what are you doing now? Okay. But Hiromu, he won the junior title at the time, and he has a completely different relationship with belts. Belt-san and sort of thing. So there was kind of an interesting dynamic there. But yeah, he destroys it to the point that Tanahashi, his mentor, steps in and says, this is this historic bout, like you can't do this, and then they have the match at Dominion. But it's phenomenal, and that whole sequence really is where he was over in 2016. He was getting over with the crowd, and they must have realized at that point that we can get this guy healed, but like we can't do it forever because this guy's we've got it. And I think they wanted that because you don't do that thing where you come back and you win the New Japan Cup and then you win the title for that kind of summer title win that we tend to see with heels. If you don't think they're going to do the big Wrestle Kingdom shows afterwards. So it's I think it's like a misconvention sometimes where they think, oh wait, it's only because that he got to that point. No, it just confirmed that they had the path right this time. But yeah, that was just, I thought it was a phenomenal run because it was just so different, and it's like it broke all the conventions of wrestler really wants this championship or do everything to hold on to it, or wrestler is like devastated by losing it and wants to get it back, all the kind of things that you think about traditionally in wrestling. And here's just like, oh yeah, I have this belt and I don't give a fuck about it, and look what it represents to me. And that kind of thing, it's like, anyone else have it? No, but it's mine to destroy now. And it became so linked with him. And I was trying to think of wrestlers who have been so successful that have won multiple world titles where another belt is associated so much with them. Part of me kind of thinking of like Shawn Michaels and the in WWF, people think of that of the mid-card belt there, but it's a weird one, but it became part of his character, and perhaps
Ultimate Warrior, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. But even more so, it becomes part of his character in later years as well, because that belt becomes a key part of his journey and his road to the Double Dome Dash sort of thing. So.
Yeah. After his reign as Intercontinental Champion, as you said, it's really well received by the crowd, and he is over by rejecting everything that he once was, and that when he was trying to appeal to the crowd, he's now actually got them behind him. And he would go on to beat Kenny Omega and win the 2017 G1 phenomenal match there. He'd head into Wrestle Kingdom to face Kazuchika Okada again, a rematch of the disastrous match from 4 years before. Trish, going into this match, sorry, we've got to talk about it. Did you think this was going to be the redemption moment?
I think everybody did. I'm not sure. Maybe there was people that thought Okada would retain, but in the majority, I think everyone thought this is Naito's crowning moment. The guy had so much momentum. especially coming off that IC title reign and then the G1 win. Merchandise was everywhere. It was taking over in that regard, and you just thought, this is his time. This is the event. This is where you do the kind of the turnaround from Wrestle Kingdom 8 for sure. Yeah.
This was actually the first ever New Japan show I watched in full. I don't know where you'd be able to find it. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but there's audio with me and Imp doing a review for Lords of Pain Radio. And he brought me on because this was an event that brought a lot of new fans in because of the Chris Jericho Omega thing. It brought a lot of American fans in off the back of just the goodwill that was around New Japan as well, and that having that matchup. And so he had me on as like this is your first impressions thing. So it's interesting thinking about this match and rewatching it in preparation for this, having not really looked at it since that very first show that I watched of New Japan. And I feel like looking back on it, this is like really to flick switches a little bit. This is really like peak Kazuchika Okada as champion. Like he has the long boys, the change up in the long boys, and at the time people didn't seem to like them. Looking at them now, they look incredible. Like he looks resplendent in them, and like this is him at his absolute pinnacle before he does get humbled by Omega at Dominion, 6 months later, and then Jay White turns on him, betrays him, and he that sort of, has like, he goes through like a whole arc himself. But what was the loss here? What did that mean for Naito, the loss at Wrestle Kingdom 12? Because as you said, like, it was perfect. It was the perfect setup for him to get the redemption, having gone through what he went through, taken the Intercontinental Championship, won the G1 again and against the same opponent as before, and he doesn't get the redemption. What does it mean for his character?
It's incredibly painful. It's because he set himself up, everything that he speaks about before then, for that triumph, and then it doesn't come. And he kind of falters a little bit after that. And it's kind of his friends in LIJ that kind of get him back a pathway, because it's defending them that brings him back to the Intercontinental Championship and brings him to Minoru Suzuki, and needing to kind of avenge Suzuki's treatment of Hiromu. Hiromu always comes up in these things, doesn't it? That brings him back to that path. But yeah, it's a real suffering, and it's one of them I think will always be argued about, because if you look back at it, you could say that Naito's kind of top part of popularity was in 2018, and it's hard because you had Okada on this huge run. It was over 500 days at the point that Wrestle Kingdom came about, and they had Kenny Omega coming through. You've got two top baby faces, chasing a champion. It's unusual to have two people that hot as they did with Naito and Omega in that year, and they decided that's what they were going to do. We was going to set Naito back on a chase, and we're going to do Omega in the summer. Obviously, things changed in 2019 with Omega's departure, but that was what they did. So, but yeah, he was around. It wasn't like I don't think he lost any support, but for his character, he kind of floated for a little bit before getting into again, reverting back to the Intercontinental stories for the meantime. But yeah, it's a painful one, especially the way that he loses, that he goes up and he calls back, and it's one of them important points. The Stardust press and that much is a really important point, because it's like a callback to, I'm still that guy. You may have turned on me, and I've become this nonchalant kind of tranquilo character, and I don't care too much, but I've never cared about anything so much in my life. And I call back to like that failure is still what drives him. And that's reinforced by, this loss here, and especially the use of like the Stardust press, which they continue on with into the third one.
Yeah, I was going to say, just put a pin in that, the missed Stardust press in sort of in the middle of the match. He goes up and he eats the mat when he hits it, when he goes for it. It's an interesting pattern of repeating as well, in that in the lead up to the Tanahashi Okada match, at the start of this year, there was a lot of people going back through the Okada-Tanahashi feud. And I remember a lot of the people talking about Wrestle Kingdom 9 and how certain they were that Okada was finally going to beat Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom 9. And in actual fact, it was like, no, he needed one final humbling before he'd be ready to finally do it at Wrestle Kingdom 10. And it made it all the more emotional. I think, and you're probably going to hate me for saying this, I think it was the right call, even for Naito, because I don't think he lost any momentum, and I think it made it even bigger when it was the third time's a charm sort of thing in Wrestle Kingdom 14. And also, it also got us this really cool feud with Chris Jericho, which I thought was like a nice coda for him. Like, he lost this match against Okada, and he's for so long been portraying himself as someone who doesn't care about what the fans think. And Chris Jericho in New Japan was like such a chaotic entity who really didn't give a fuck what the fans thought. Like, he could not have given a single shit about what the fans thought. And it was interesting how he and Naito then went head to head, and Naito had to face this even more chaotic element in Chris Jericho. They had their two matches, the one at Dominion, the one at Wrestle Kingdom 13. They were both just absolute brawls. Really violent matches, really different matches from the other things that Naito was doing. What did you think of the pairing of Naito and Chris Jericho in 2018?
It was, again, it kind of comes around similar to the Suzuki one in terms of it's because of Jericho targeting, his LIJ family, that they really become involved more than just the belt. He goes after Evil in particular. And that drives Naito in a way that the title doesn't. But it's all kind of nicely interlinked as well, because you do these kind of things that are very different for him. You see him venture out, but also it's about him becoming more accepting of that Intercontinental title in terms of part of it, to the point where he uses it against Jericho at the Wrestle Kingdom after. So yeah, it was in terms of, if you want something like a placeholder kind of program, and to illustrate somebody's growth or someone doing something different, it worked really, really well. I think it was a combination of Jericho's run in terms of his energy. I think that kind of that did calm down a little bit after that, and I don't think you see the same, as much as the Painmaker stuff was fun. Wrestle Kingdom 14, I don't think you see quite the same energy from it as you did from that. But yeah, it's, to me, as much as it was like the Chris Jericho story, I thought that, the way that this kind of culminated Naito's relationship with the Intercontinental title and how he felt about the belt, to the point where he became accepting of it by Wrestle Kingdom, was more important to me. For that's being obsessed with someone's story, I think. And the matches maybe.
And it's interesting talking about this match, because we've talked so much about what Naito went through. We've talked very little about Okada, and he has his own ups and downs. The quest to beat Tanahashi, the record-breaking title reign, humbled by Omega, the balloons, being betrayed by Jay White. But none of Okada's story really speaks about Naito. It's like Naito is not a giant presence in Okada's story. How do you think, like, Okada represents a better question, what do you think Okada represents in this program in contrast to Naito in this rivalry between the two?
Okada is everything that Naito was set up to be at the start, but isn't. And that's the difference between them. So, and it's an interesting one, because you can't have Okada be Naito, and you can't have Naito be Okada by the time you get to kind of this point, because Okada is the champion. He's not a guy that, and I mean this nicely, that, if you do the Small Journey to the World title, people are going to run out and like, I need to be there for this, I need to do that for that. They go because he's the champion, he's New Japan. And so he's the obstacle. He's the guy that has the standard. That's who Okada is. He's not that guy that you're going to have that emotional kind of run away with. As and I admit the Tanahashi stuff with, especially with him crying and that, did kind of make people see a different side of him. But yeah, he's that champion. He's that standard bearer. He's that guy that you want to live up to. And Naito's that guy that's driven by his failure to beat Okada, his failure to beat Okada, his failure to be in that spot. You know, after Wrestle Kingdom in 2018, you know, Okada taunts Naito in terms of, how did it feel to be in the main event? Well, it feels even better to win. And that's the difference between the two. He is essentially a winner, whereas Naito has to constantly kind of deal with his own failure, and his own failure at the highest level, because, it's not like he's never won anything. He's won. You've got the IWGP Heavyweight in 2016. You've got the G1 wins. You've got the Japan Cup win. You've got numerous kind of intercontinental reigns in that. So he's still a winner, but he's not on that level, and that's what dogs him. And that's why Okada is such an essential part of the story. And you're right. You look back and you think of Okada's story, and you'll think much more straight away of Tanahashi. You're going to think more of Omega. It's these sort of things are going to be
even Jay White. Points. Jay White's like more of an antagonist in Okada's story than Naito is in so many ways.
Yeah. So it's and especially even if you extend that past kind of COVID as well. Jay White keeps that kind of thing going into, that Dominion win. And I mean, maybe we won't talk about that Wrestle Kingdom main event that followed, but it's definitely, that is a fair point. But yeah, for Naito, Okada represents something in him than I think more than their rivalry or their kind of progress back and forth. It's about not being able to live up to being Okada. And then that's where the Double Dome is clever in that aspect, whether, I know not everyone was fans of it, but it's kind of like, it's an opportunity for Naito to do something first. It's an opportunity for Naito to be better or be seen as above Okada for the first time in his career. And I think that's what drives him to begin that. Once he's accepted the Intercontinental title, once he's decided that there can be some use for it, post winning it back from Jericho at Wrestle Kingdom 13. And and that's not accepted by everybody. Ibushi gets very upset about the idea of just using this other belt as like a pawn for the world title. And I felt sorry for it. They give Ibushi some awful things, the baby face positioning wise. They continue to do that. But yeah, it's that sort of thing where it gives him the opportunity to do something that Okada can't do first. And that's such a driver in 2019. In terms of going towards this one in 2020. And thankfully, Okada didn't last his red hair balloon Okada for too long either. Because you can't look at this one and go, oh yeah, could you imagine that character in the Dome in 2020? No, not particularly. But yeah, it is an interesting point how he's so critical to Naito's story, and especially his title story, because his entire title story up to that point was all about Okada. 2016 winners, he wins and loses to Okada as well. And it's not the same for Okada for sure.
And it's sort of odd to me that the build to this match, it's like this massive odyssey for Naito, but the actual match itself kind of comes about in a very like almost roundabout road. Naito doesn't win the G1 heading into Wrestle Kingdom 14. Instead, it's Kota Ibushi that does that. And Naito even loses the Intercontinental title to Jay White in the run up to Wrestle Kingdom. But it's then put to, fatefully and very dramatically, ironically, a fan vote is announced that the 2 nights of Wrestle Kingdom, would they culminate in a double gold dash, with night one seeing Naito and Jay White face each other for the Intercontinental title, and the G1 winner, Ibushi, challenging Okada for the IWGP Heavyweight title, and then on night 2, the winner of those matches facing off in the main event for both titles. I've got really mixed feelings about this setup, Trish. It felt very awkward at the time, the way they sort of put it together. And it despite this multi-year journey, it felt like almost unearned that Naito was inserting himself into this, having just lost the title. Like you knew that he should be there, but you're like, but you just lost. Should you really be there? How did you feel about it?
Yeah, so I think it's one of the things that people misremember the most, because they're like, oh, this incredible Naito journey, and the right to do this thing in 2018, and they did this great build, and Wrestle Kingdom Wrestle Kingdom in 2020, Wrestle Kingdom 14. It's like, no, the build was shocking in so many ways. Naito's way of qualifying for this was to beat Taichi. Sorry, Taichi.
Everyone beats Taichi.
Yeah, but like you look at it on paper and you think, okay, I can see the logic in it. Naito starts talking about double gold dash in early 2019, and you do the story of Ibushi. So he needs this belt, the IC belt that he's always hated. He now needs it to get what he really wants, right? So he loses that, and then he gains it back at Dominion in the match that Dave Meltzer went nuts over because they tried to destroy each other's necks. And then you think, okay, he can win a G1 and he doesn't do that. And you're okay, he can still use this kind of thing as a pawn, and then he loses it to Jay White, and you're just like, what the fuck's going on? Yeah. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, he beats Taichi in his power struggle, and then it's like, okay, we're going to insert in here. So yeah, it did feel unearned. It was very kind of rushed forward. It's kind of funny because they've replicated so much of it with the Yoda Tsuji Takeshita stuff this year. And that was a similar thing, but at least Tsuji went and won that belt back first. So yeah, it did do. It's one of them things where, because of how it ended and how it played into the long-term story, we kind of cut it off. We kind of cut off how awkward like the multi-man promo was around the end of World Tag League. But yeah, it kind of felt like we need to get here, and we are here. And I get the idea of it, because you want him to have kind of the double momentum, right? You want him to have the night one thing, and you put him behind Jay White, you vanquish Jay White, and then you have Okada's second night as the big boss, the kind of final boss battle. But yeah, they just didn't come up with anything that kind of really you would look back on and go, hey, that's a great blueprint on how to do that. It was absolutely not. And if it had been a different situation, or the company was less hot, or it wasn't Tetsuya Naito, would it have worked? Probably not.
Yeah,
but
the idea of a double gold dash is great. 2 nights of Wrestle Kingdom, you've got this weekend thing. I believe it was like the changing of an era or something in Japan as well. You may know more about that than me, but the idea of it is great. Fantastic idea, but they nearly tripped and stumbled on the way into it, like the entry point to that. I think, as you said, like, it was a very awkward promo when they're all sort of setting this up, and then Okada's just like, oh well, I don't really care about that Intercontinental belt, so if I win it, I don't care about it, but you guys, I guess, can fight over it, and it'll be part of this thing. Moving on to Wrestle Kingdom. We do need to get into the match at some point. Night one, of course, Naito beats Jay White to take back the Intercontinental Championship. Put a pin in the fact that he has a bit of damage done to his knee in that match, with Jay White targeting the knee. And Okada beats Kota Ibushi in like a really hard-hitting match.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences, and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity, and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently, too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Which brings us to Sunday, January 5th, Wrestle Kingdom 14, 2020 in the Tokyo Dome. Kazuchika Okada versus Tetsuya Naito for the double gold. And this match, of course, let's give it its flowers as we move into it, as we always do here on the Match Guide. Dave Meltzer gets one. The big 5 stars, 5 even stars, well-deserved. And on Cage Match, it's currently rated 9.6. That is the 40th highest ranked match of all time. So a match that is universally regarded very highly amongst fans and critics alike. Of course, before we get to the match itself, let's talk about these entrances, because these are some all-time pieces of pro wrestling presentation, Trish.
Yeah, so they are both white suits. It's like the purity of like this being a new thing. And Naito is pretty much the same white suit as that he wore in 2018 as well. And he just...
It's like white fur, though.
Yeah. Oh, well, you've got to go one up a little bit, you know? And then with Okada, you had this kind of... you had the white rain jacket, but it was like...
dark.
It was like, the ultraviolet one, you know, like, which he really started to kind of get into in 2020, 2021. But yeah, they look fantastic. And that's the thing, isn't it, with New Japan, is their production presentation. Especially for big events, I still think it's unmatched. I think we saw that very much this year. And this felt like, it didn't matter, you know, because this was the second day of kind of a long show. They'd had the Liger retirement early on in the show as well. And the crowd in the middle kind of burnt themselves a little bit. But by this point, it was like, this is the main event. This is the thing we've all come to see. This is the thing we're all waiting on. The crowd's up, everything's like that. And those presentation in terms of those entrances was just phenomenal. And you get to the bit where before they do the ring announcements, they're in the ring and you have just them in their kind of white outfits, back, you know, front to face, facing each other. And you've got like the white light, just the white strobe light just coming in. And that's just such a phenomenal visual. That's where it's like their camera work and their production is kind of unmatched, because after all this time, after everything that's happened, after, you know, Okada's ridiculously long reign in get my thoughts away, in 2016 and 2018, to everything that's happened with Naito on his journey, it's now down to these two guys for these two belts, and there's just them and this light, and it's just it sticks with me, that image, for sure.
The word that comes to mind for me is gravitas. This feels like it has so much importance. And a few little points that, you know, these guys feel like they are the two biggest stars in all of wrestling for the most important belts in all of wrestling. And this is the most important match in all of wrestling at this moment in time. And that low angle shot, the one you're talking about, that will most likely be what you're looking at if you're looking at the artwork on this podcast. I can't imagine myself putting anything else in there. That is just the visual of that is, to me, that is an iconic pro wrestling image. To me, a couple of things I'll pull, just shout out on Naito's jacket. He's got in black lettering. It's got some white fur jacket, and then in black lettering, Todo or Nada. All or nothing. Yeah. Yep. Really cool. And then also there's this interesting moment, which I have to give some credit to an anonymous Twitter user that I've long since forgotten, but pointed it out. There's they put together images of Naito when Okada did his pose. So Okada does his entrance, his music's going, he gets up on the turnbuckle and does the Rainmaker pose. In the very first match that they had, he's got his back turned. He's not facing Okada. He can't look at Okada. At Wrestle Kingdom 12 in 2018, he's half facing him. And this time, though, he is fully looking at him, staring him dead in the back. If you're talking about, as you've said at the start, like Naito sees Okada as everything he isn't, him not being able to face Okada in that first match, sort of turned halfway in the second match and then fully facing him in this match. It says a lot if you're buying into that narrative that you pointed out there, Trish. Just him being fully ready to face all that he wants to be, and all that he has failed to be, but he's actually ready to face it now. For the first time in this match, which is a really cool little narrative kind of thing to have built up. And I've got to shout out Chris Charlton, because, man, Chris Charlton, when he's on one, he is one of the best in the business at building up the story of these wrestlers. He talking about Naito's setbacks, all the defeats he's had at Okada's hands, how long he's been trying to get to this point. And he says, this is the final chapter, not just of the double gold dash, but Tetsuya Naito and golden glory. And the question is, does this story have a happy ending? or is it after all a bitter tragedy? What a way to start. Really great way to set up this match with those guys on commentary. And if you're listening to the English commentary, of course, and the visuals we're talking about. The bell rings, really slow match, really slow pace at the start of this match, which is kind of fitting given what they went through the night before and the importance, the gravitas, the build-up that we're talking about. The first lockup is really strong, but it's pretty much a stalemate. I found this like in this slow pace at the start, like a really interesting contrast to the start of that Wrestle Kingdom 12 match where they're like immediately out there throwing bombs and dodging each other's bombs right at the start.
I was kind of glad of it as well because you do want to sell the night before. Yeah, you want to sell that in the kind of the hard-hitting kind of fast pace of the Ibushi Okada match. You want to sell the damage that Jay White inflicted onto the knees of Tetsuya Naito, and they make that a key point in this match. So yeah, that's just an important thing that like you should never just come away from that. You know, you've got to work on. Literally, we had a massive show the night before with all these things and build that into the story. So I was just grateful for that because I think that happens too much these days where people just go, oh, it didn't happen.
And I think it also gives a chance for them to sell the crowd as well because like it's a slow pace. So you're just hearing like all the calls just echoing through the Tokyo Dome. And there's no building that echoes like the Tokyo Dome. It seems so cavernous, and the way that the calls just bounce around it and resonate, and there's so much reverb to it all. I love hearing it, and them going slowly gives time for that all to build, and it feels, as I said, gravitas. It feels so important and such a big deal because of all of these things that are going on in it.
That comes from the roof. They have the air pressure roof in the Tokyo Dome, so the roof is completely held up by air, and that's why you get the huge echoes. But yeah, it happens here, and then as we get towards the end, obviously there's one exchange that we'll get to that just
absolutely
that roof is just it plays into it, and it just sounds just there's nothing. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anything like that elsewhere, ever. So
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, Okada, he gets most of the early offense in, and even after Naito gets on the front foot for a bit, he starts going after Okada's neck. He hits a neck breaker on the outside. He holds a cravat, twisting Okada's neck. He, kicking it, bludgeoning it every chance he gets. I love something I want to point out about Naito's moves is you mentioned, half an hour or so ago at this point, how he, he slows everything down. But there's no other wrestler, like even amongst juniors, I feel like, that have the acceleration that Naito has from standing start to acceleration. Maybe Kenny Omega at his peak is like that, which is one of the reasons Naito and Omega's matches are just so electric, is because like they're going from standing start to acceleration is just electric. It's so quick, and it's such a great contrast between like his slow taunts and then when he moves to attack, he's just like lightning.
Yeah, the people that can manage pace changes like that are the ones that can captivate the crowds most, I think, in matches. I've always been of that belief. I do think it's absolutely something that Omega does, that you can go from nothing and all of a sudden it's like bang, and it catches the crowd. And it's like, it doesn't matter how you feel up to that moment, you're in then. And he's exactly the same. And he plays on it, that he uses the nonchalance, that sort of thing, and his slow movements. And it just creates that kind of sense of surprise. And then you build that momentum straight into the follow-up as well. So it's a key part of why he resonates so much with crowds in matches.
And of course, the neck attack that Naito is doing is absolutely setting up for his finish of the Destino. So it makes sense why he's going for that. Also, of course, Okada just in a match with Ibushi, a man who is apt to enjoys dropping people on their necks. So it's a good follow-up from that. I do want to call out as well just the body language for Okada and Naito. There's a lot of they tread the line of playing to the rafters because the Tokyo Dome is a I said cavernous before. It is a giant building. They're playing to the rafters, but also there's like a lot of subtlety to their facial expressions. You know, you've got like Naito just like spitting in Okada's face, which is something everyone can see. But then you've got like the small little looks of contempt from each other, particularly Okada just showing how much he just has zero respect for Naito. The little squints at each other, playing to the TV audience as well that the camera picks up. Both of these two, you know, two of the biggest stars in the world, surprise, surprise, masters of body language.
Okada's like trash talking for a lot of it as well. That kind of continues on from Wrestle Kingdom 12. It's like, I don't think Okada carries exactly the same type of kind of nonchalance towards Naito in this one. I don't think he has the same air of invincibility that he perhaps but he still has that same kind of hatred, that same kind of like talking down to Naito during the match. He's constantly kind of yabbering all the way through, all in terms of that. And yeah, it's just that's the thing I think I notice more and more these days. It's the tiny little things that separate these guys from everybody else in what they do.
Well, if you think about it, the guys that Okada has had to worry about in his entire time, of course, Tanahashi, and that's like the biggest hurdle for him, but that's his senior. That's like the top guy when he comes in. But the guys that Okada has had to worry about since he's been on top have all been outsiders. It's AJ Styles, it's Kenny Omega, it's Jay White, even to a sort of lesser degree, but at the same time, it's Minoru Suzuki. These are guys who've come from outside of New Japan. People like Goto have not been a problem for Okada. Like he beats Goto and then he's like, maybe you can join my team. Yeah, poor Goto. He got his flowers eventually. He got there eventually. And same with Naito. Like Okada just does not think Naito is, it's not as invincible as him peak 2018, the long boys, the perfect blonde hair, all of that. But it's still, he sees himself as the top dog amongst the Japanese wrestlers. Of course, he sees himself as a top dog of everyone, but he's not worried about the people who've come from inside New Japan supplanting him. He feels like he is above everyone, including Naito.
And it works here because you have him, it makes him more of the antagonist as the match goes on. And they're already kind of very much in Naito's corner at the start, but it only works to make it kind of even louder as things progress.
And we're just about to hit that. Like after 15 minutes, Okada, he's had most of the running in this match, really, but he hasn't been able to put any truly significant damage on. He misses his first Rainmaker attempt. Naito keeps managing to counter like Okada's standard offense. But after kicking Naito to the outside, he sort of has a new tact. And he just goes straight for Naito's bad knees. Naito, legendarily bad knees, but also had been attacked by Jay White the night before. Okada just picks up his leg, slams him knee first into the mats on the outside of the ring, then picks him up and slams him knee first into the table on the outside of the ring.
Noise. It makes such noise, that table one.
It's vicious. It's just vicious. And like it's showing Okada's ruthlessness. And that really truly turns the crowd behind Naito. And really, I think, flips a switch in this match as well. This is when this match really starts to get cooking, is when Okada just like ruthlessly goes after Naito's knee. The crowd gets so behind Naito, and it really reminded me of how ruthless Okada was against Tanahashi this year as well. I guess like I'm watching this in light of having that match just burns so brightly in my thoughts at the moment, Tanahashi versus Okada, and seeing like how ruthless Okada was willing to be. It really reminded me of that.
It's actually really hard to tell them apart sometimes when I look back at the matches because they use so many constructs at the same to get people behind the babyface. So you have that one where he drops him on the outside knee, and it's the same as what they do with Tanahashi in the ramp. And then they do the thing with Tanahashi trying to get back in for the 20 count. And they do the same thing with Naito here. And I think Tanahashi falls
falling
down.
Over.
Well, Tanahashi falls like once, I think, on the 18 count when he's coming back in. Everyone's panicking and that sort of thing. And obviously you have the extra, you use the word gravitas, but you have the extra gravitas from the stipulation, obviously, being his last match. But in this one, it's like he's on the outside and they get to like a 16 count and he drops, and he gets towards like the blue barriers and he drops again, and then he drops again on the 18, and people are just freaking out. And then they did that really clever thing where he gets back in the ring and you have that relief, and then straight away Okada's down from the top, and it's and that's just such great stuff, because it's like you have that relief moment and then you don't get even a second to bask in it before like Okada's on the offense. And they did the same thing in both of those matches this year, and it's a simple thing to do. But it just, the way that it manipulates the emotions of the crowd is just top notch.
And the way that it's shot as well is like Okada, it's a shotgun drop kick off the ropes, and Naito like throws himself in the ring, gets up, and Okada just flies in from the ring and smashes into him with the shotgun drop kick, and then a big German suplex after, like high angle German suplex, and then goes for the Rainmaker, which Naito just manages to hit a spinning DDT off the ropes to do that, and he's like limping, that showing the effects of the knee, and he manages to like just sort of pick up Okada and dump him on his neck, and then they get up on the top ropes and he pulls this poison rana that Okada takes like straight on the neck. It looks absolutely insane, Trish. Okada's neck it looks as bad as the snapdragon off the top rope that Omega did at Wrestle Kingdom 11. The neck is just bending. Gross.
It's one of them when you want them to, like, I get they want to add something extra to this one, because and I like that they kept so many of the sequences from the past two. So especially the kind of the strike exchange on the knees kind of later on is calls back to last two. And then you have like the fight kind of for the suplex as well, which you take out of 2018, and you kind of bring that into here, and how Naito is able to counter it now this time. But yeah, that was just this is why we are where we are in 2026 with these guys, especially with Okada's neck. But but in terms of the moment, again, it was a pace change too, so it kind of comes out of nowhere. Naito just changes the pace completely, and everyone kind of just lifts up from there.
And like after that, they start to trade their counters to their biggest moves. Naito hits the running Destino for like a big 2 count. The crowd is going absolutely nuts. They're nothing like the respectful, silent Japanese crowd that I was told only exist by a bunch of Western wrestlers. This crowd is like just cheering, and they're so loud. And the English commentary desk, actually, like I just have to shout them out, because I love this version of the English commentary desk with Rocky, Chris Charlton, of course, Kevin Kelly, and Gino Gambino. You've got like Rocky Romero's just like screaming "all or nothing," and Gino Gambino's got like this gravel in his baritone that's just superb. Kevin Kelly's like just borderline unglued. And when Naito like finally goes for a full Destino, he shouts, "Don't waste it! You finally got him!" It's like the perfect words to put at that moment.
Yeah, I will admit that I've never seen it with English commentary.
Wow. Okay, there you go. Well,
and that's not just like that's no disrespectful to anybody. That's something I've always watched with Japanese commentary, because when I started watching that for a lot of the shows, that was all that was available. So I just kind of got used to it, and now I just kind of like listening to kind of their influences and that sort of thing. And yeah, that was just as crazy. Like I think both. So I can't speak for the English commentary, but the Japanese commentary still added so much to the match, because they're allowed emotion. I think that's the biggest thing around when I think about New Japan commentary is they're allowed emotion. They're not kept from it. Like they just go with it. They just ride with the match, and that's where it adds to it rather than taking away as it can do with other things, for sure.
Yeah, they're like riding the energy of the crowd. They're like surfing it like a wave. It's fantastic. And I must say, like, it's cool watching these matches with the Japanese commentary as well, because it almost helps you get, because you like, I'm not sure if you understand Japanese or not, or some, you may understand some Japanese. I understand none of it. But the thing that you get by like not knowing the words they're saying, all you have is the emotion. And so it just helps you almost get even more swept up in the emotion of the match, because that's all you can get out of it. You just hear the tone of voice and the emotion in the delivery, so it can just get you more swelled up. But I really like the English crowd. I think the English commentary desk now is really good, with Charlton and Walker. Yep, sorry, I nearly forgot his name. Sorry, Walker Stewart. Yeah, like this particular version of the desk, this is one of their best calls ever, along with the one that I was talking about, back in December, November, with the young boy, Ibushi and Tanahashi. That's one of their best calls as well. And yeah, this match, the crowd's just so into it. And after that stretch of them trying to go, they're both going for their big counters. It all sort of breaks down. None of them can get the 3 count at that point, and they're just on the ground. They rise, their sort of heads are very close to each other, and they're on their knees. They start trading elbows in the middle. It's the kind of spot that you see so much in wrestling. Like they've just had a big thing. 2 wrestlers, they're out on their feet. They rise to their feet in the center of the ring, trading blows as they go. It's sometimes feels so massively overdone in modern wrestling. For me, a lot of times now I see it and I'm just like, oh, skip this. Like, can I fast forward a minute? I've seen this so many times. But in this match, when it's done like this, in this kind of match, it's so perfect. The way that the facial expressions, and of course the crowd. Like, I feel like you can hear the crowd inhaling before they like just explode with each elbow. In this match, and in situations like this particular scenario is so good for communicating, how these people feel about each other, how much they want it, how much they're willing to take to get it. It's just such an incredible auditory experience.
And each of the shots just sound like gunshots. And you get the afterwards, like the hey afterwards. And it's like, that's where you get the reverberation off the roof. And there's like a sharpness to those kind of sounds, and then the echo. And that's where it feels like nothing else. And it does really play back into the last 2. And you can see that the difference in these exchanges in terms of how these people have grown, how the characters have grown, where they are, and that sort of thing. And you can match them up if you want to. I think it's a kind of cool thing to do, and look through how the audience reaction has changed over the course of those 3 matches as well. And in this one, it's like, it feels like the peak. It feels like you're at the peak of this journey just from the noise alone. And that's kind of, we do see it too much. We do see, everyone does it like, here's a general strike exchange, and then we'll get a crowd, I'm like, hey, and then into the vice versa. Because this felt like just such a key exchange. This was literally fighting for every single thing that they wanted to be the very best. And it's these 2 guys going blow to blow with that noise, just that sharpness, crispness, and the echo behind it. And it's just phenomenal. It's a great visual as well, the way it's shot, and obviously the audio adds to it. But it really felt like you can feel the combination of these 2 kind of coming together to fight for these 2 belts in that moment. And it's weird because it's a slower the pace. You have this really kind of you've got the very fast pace bit before that where we're doing the counters, we're doing kicking out finishes, that sort of thing. And it's like all of a sudden it's like, and we slow that pace all the way down, and because we're now going to build up for this final stretch.
And it's like, no, don't do this in like the 3rd match on Collision in Des Moines. Yeah. Because I've seen Kota Ibushi and Tetsuya Naito standing on mountains as titans standing on mountains, and the main event of the Tokyo Dome for the 2 belts, trading blows, and the and 30,000 people going with every single blow. It's like, don't do it in those other situations, because it pales in what this moment looks like. As I said, like, it's 2 titans standing on mountains trading blows. This is the 2 biggest guys in the moment, and the slowing down of the pace is really effective at that moment, for bringing the crowd into it and bringing the match towards its crescendo as well.
No, absolutely. It's a great moment. And it's one of them things where I think a lot at the moment is you could, and there's lots of things in this match like that, but it's the really simple things that work the best.
Well, look, let's get to the next moment because there's another big one coming up. It looks like Okada's going to get it. He hits a spinning Rainmaker. He gets a tombstone. He pulls a full ripcord Rainmaker, but Naito kicks out at 2. As Okada goes for another tombstone, Naito, like he's not doing anything. I love it when it's not even a move. He's just like thrashing to get out. All he can do is thrash out and he collapses. All he can do at that point is rise and spit in Okada's face and then collapse again. And, you know, getting spit on in the face, not for the first time, I might add, as the effect on Okada you might expect. Okada goes back to the knee, slams him into the canvas. And for the, you know, we hear some real proper booing from the crowd when this happens. Okada then hits 2 Rainmakers in a row, but he doesn't want to pin Naito because he's pissed off at getting spat on. He wants to rub it in. The crowd's roaring as he's going for a third, but Naito counters it with Destino. And Trish, we get to this is the moment of the match, I think. He, instead of going for the pin, he picks him up, he slams him in the corner. He goes to the top turnbuckle. He goes for the Stardust press. And you can, I said before you could hear the crowd breathe in. I think you can hear it again. This is squeaky buttholes time. This is where he came undone last time. But why, Trish? Why did he need to go back to the Stardust press at this point?
God, I was so scared. I don't think I've ever been so scared by wrestling in my entire life. It's like, Connor, don't do it. Don't do it. Please don't do it. But yeah, it goes back to them themes. Like, he's failed with this twice, you know, in these matches. He still has to prove to himself, you know, that the failures of 2014 and 2018, that he is more than that. But this guy that was there in the beginning, this guy that was the Stardust Genius, this guy that came through who won that G1 and was voted down in the fan vote, he's still that guy. He's still that guy. He always was that guy, and he's proving that to himself, and he's proving that to everybody else as well. And that he always could have beaten Okada. He always could have been the top guy, but that wasn't his pathway. But this is his proving point. This is him saying, I have this now. I'm not a failure anymore. I'm not having to live up to that. I'm not carrying that uncertainty that I walked into in 2014 that was written all over his face. I didn't know who I was really. I thought I was going to be this person, but I'm not. And living with that failure, living with that kind of uncomfortable feeling of not belonging in the way that you wanted to, in the way that you expected to. And in this moment, he was like, I'm all of those things. I have embraced that failure. I embraced kind of that I am different, that I am not Okada. I am not that guy. That doesn't mean I can't be at the top of this mountain. It doesn't mean that I can't be the guy in this company. I just have to do things differently. And that's what brought the fans to him, and that's who he is in the moment. And as much as you say, like you mentioned the kind of the turns at the start of the match in terms of him facing Okada on fully this time, rather than like partially or not at all as in 2014. This is another moment where he's like, this is an assuredness. This is, I am Tetsuya Naito in 2020, and this is my moment. And the moment that thing hits, and it's so quick actually, it's really funny because it feels like forever as he goes up there, but it's really not. It's actually really, really quick. And I like that as well because he doesn't like sit over it for too long. It's just like, no, I'm just going to do this now. I'm not even going to think about it. It's not even going to be that sort of thing. It's like, we're going to do this and then we're going to go for it and I'm going to win this match. It's that just assuredness. It's just that another level of that kind of story of he's ready. This is his moment now. And it's not having that doubt or that kind of time over it that he did in 2018 or in 2014. But I love that. You've got to do those sort of cool, it plays so much, you know, mid-match storytelling into a journey. You don't need to do, I'm calling people out kind of way now. You don't need to do mid-match promos or any of that shit or anything like, you know, to try and, you have to tell the audience a story. The audience know the story because they live with it. And all you need to do is that, and they're in that moment and they can see everything in that history. They don't need a video package. They don't need anything like that. And they make tremendous video packages in New Japan. But as soon as he kind of rose up the ropes, they all knew. They all knew.
They don't even need him to pause at the top to think, will I or won't I?
They don't. Like, they just
but you can hear the crowd. Like the crowd know this. They know what's going on. It's a fantastic moment of like show, don't tell almost as well.
Yep.
Like he doesn't need to, as you said, doesn't need to get up and look down and look up and pause and think. And he's just he bang, he goes up, he hits it. But the crowd understands the weight of it immediately, and they explode when he hits it. And I remember exploding at home. Like I remember like jumping up and just punching the air and going, "Fuck yeah!" And I wasn't even a giant Naito fan, but it's just like wrestling is so great when you can combine. This is something that I think I'm going to be harping on about a little bit during this season, but wrestling doesn't have to be story or action. It can be both, and it's best when it's both. It's like incredible athletic action and great story combined together. And when they combine together, it's just magic. There's nothing like it that gets you swept up like it. And this is one of those moments. This is one of those, I don't even want to say moments. This is one of those parts. This is one of these moments in time, or whatever we want to call it. But this is one of those times when everything just happens perfectly. The crowd gets it, the commentary gets it, and as Naito closes the book spiritually, they go immediately to the match ending. It's exactly the right time. He hits a final backdrop on Okada, a final Destino. Naito gets the 3 and the win. Could they have executed the ending any better, Trish?
No, my favorite thing about the ending is that because it looks like Okada's going to go for the Rainmaker, and then you get the counter, and as soon as he sweeps the leg, he's not even over the top on a Destino, he literally sweeps his leg, and there's people in the crowd cheering, like celebrating, because they know. I just love that. It's like they don't even get to the point where he's going for the pin. They just know in that moment that it's here, and you can hear that energy come out, and it just. I watch that back again and again. Sometimes just that one moment of just hearing that all them years of emotion just come out of that crowd. And he goes for the pin, and here's that little thing where his leg like shakes in excitement as he's going for the pin. And I always contradict it because I'm sad I watch so much body language myself in terms of like little things and pins. Like he has that narrow like near kick out at the end of 2018. His leg comes out afterwards, and there's like a despondency and not quite being able to do it. And then this one, it's just like he can feel it, and it's just a tiny thing. It's just a shake of the leg. But yeah, that was it, and just perfect execution. Hit the peak of it as well. Didn't miss it. Yep. I think in 2018, when I look back at that, there's the sequence after the double Destino, the kick out, where you just maybe went too long, but I guess it's different. It's hard to look at because now it's Okada's match, right? It's about his kind of streak, his record-setting world title reign, and everything that talk about after that is about Okada, not about Naito's failure. So it kind of makes sense, but it didn't quite feel like it hit the beat. This one hit the beat. It was like we did the Star Express, we went on, we did that, and we're straight into this sequence at the end, and there you go, and you have that moment, and the crowd are it's a fantastic combination of this story, and it's the match is very fitting in that, and I think it's hard sometimes because when you do something for this long. And as you said at the beginning, in New Japan wrestlers, often it goes back to the first match of your career. We've just seen that with like the Goto thing last year. They go through his entire history together, and it felt like that with Naito. You lived this journey with this character, with this wrestler, and this is the culminating moment. And sometimes you think, God, what would it be like if it didn't live up to it? If the match wasn't this incredible spectacle at the end where. Everything played into it and it was just kind of run of the mill. Would you feel the same? And you'd still feel something. Absolutely you would. But the fact that they hit this so perfectly, that they brought so many elements of the last kind of essentially decade between the two of them into the match, and the crowd, which was one of the most phenomenal crowds. Like you've heard, it's just the level of engagement for the moment, like they begin to come out to the end. It just never stops. They live and they die by it, and that's what makes this kind of just such a perfect ending to this story, really, for me.
Well, it's why they're two of the greatest of their generation, the greatest to ever do it, really, like because they can take it all and they can execute on this level at when it counts, at the most important time when it comes to landing the plane for Naito's story. They land it. Could not have gone better. I talk a lot on this. I've talked a few times on this podcast about the perfect ending to a match being when the emotion, the story, and the in-ring action all climax together at the same time. I think this is a great example of that. It's ones I've pointed to in the past. Eddie Kingston versus Jon Moxley in their I Quit match. I think the Stadium Stampede, the first Stadium Stampede, is an example of that. Orange Cassidy and Jon Moxley is another one as well. And this match, I think, is a great example. Everything culminating together at the right time. It does not overstay its welcome, which is something I think too many matches do. This is, perfect ending, the perfect ending for the match. They get the spiritual closing of the book with the Stardust press, hits his finisher, and it's over. The crowd is in raptures. And the quest is over for Naito. Let's talk about the post match. Naito grabs a mic. There's a few bits of the post match before people who know what's happened are going to know what we're going to talk about. But they're going to know. They're going to be probably interested in what you think of it, Trish, as well. Naito grabs a mic and he shouts out to Okada and he goes, "What does being main eventing the Tokyo Dome feel like? Feels pretty good." Call back to how Okada, kind of taunted him from the ring last time, and Okada puts up a fist sort of in salute to Naito beating him and getting the best of him. And Naito says that he hopes to fight him in the Tokyo Dome again one day, before he's presented with the belts. Any thoughts on that before we move to the next part, Trish?
No, that was a nice closing kind of bit with the acknowledgement from Okada as well. That you finally got here. I've taunted you for years and years and years, and this is your time now. So it was nice, nice little closing of that chapter for sure.
Yeah. So Naito then goes to call out the rest of Los Ingobernables de Japón, as he does at the end of many shows. But he doesn't get to the end because Kenta flies in, and he actually really flies in. He sprints in. He kicks the bejesus out of Naito. He kicks him. He does the corner drop kick, and then he sits on his chest and walks out to a chorus of boos. So Naito has just finally conquered the mountain, finally beat Okada, finally put to death the skeletons in his closet, the ghosts of Wrestle Kingdom's past. And immediately Kenta comes out to spoil the moment. Naito doesn't get to celebrate with his boys, Los Ingobernables. This was a controversial one at the time, Trish. It really was. Many say it spoiled a great moment. Many say Naito should have been given the moment to bask in the glory. The fans should have had the chance to go home happy with the Naito and his band of Motley Crue, who, as you said, was so important to what Naito was at the time. And he didn't get to have that moment of triumph in the ring with them. But others say that this was great pro wrestling angle building, and it created buzz around this Kenta Naito match, which then went on to do really well at the box office for New Beginning. Trish, you are someone incredibly invested in Naito's journey. I believe you once flew to Japan to watch the roll call when you thought it was going to happen. How did you feel about this moment?
I was so fucking pissed. Now, I can look back at it, right, and I can say it built into the Kenta thing for New Beginning. Yeah, New Beginning did great business. The idea is that you keep the babyface hot because he's still got something that he has revenge for, right? And they were going to, and then obviously they were going to move on to doing it. You keep the roll call for another moment. They did that obviously with Sonata match. Fine, but at the time I was so pissed. Because you waited so long for this culminating moment and you wanted the roll call. If you were into LIJ, if you were a fan of Tetsuya Naito at the time, you wanted that moment because you were so just invested in him. You were invested in the relationships that he had with Bushi, with Hiromu. Obviously was hurt, for a long part of his last build to the Double Dome. to Evil, to Sonata, and then obviously Shingo had recently joined up, but you were so invested in his relationship between these characters that you wanted that moment for him as well, because it was a representation of everything that brought him to there. And then to have like Kento run in and do that, and you think, oh, Okada got his moments after the Dome, Tanahashi got his moments. I can't know this. But yeah, emotionally they got you. I think the hardest thing about it is because of COVID, we never really saw what that title run would be, and then having another moment at a Dome in front of they still had a fantastic crowd for the Sonata match, but it wasn't the same Naito. It wasn't the peak Naito. So it's kind of,
and it wasn't the same band of characters by that point either. Like, it wasn't.
No, you
Evil was out by that point. Sonata was part of Just Five Guys.
Side. And he was on the other side of the ring. So
Hiromu was not the same. Like, didn't have the same energy about him at the time, and Shingo had been champion by that point as well.
It's a different dynamic, and it wasn't that dynamic. So I think it's kind of like the 2018 thing. It will be one of them things that gets argued about for continuously, probably forever. But it's harder now because we don't know what it would have looked like. It's like the timelines, isn't it? It's like a Loki thing of Disney. But you don't know what that timeline would have looked like, and whether the payoff would have been different. But the Rock was incredibly important to LIJ fans, so they manipulated us perfectly. Sure.
And look, part of it is that there's no right answer really. Like, they're both right. It was really great angle building, but it also would have been really nice if they sent this crowd that's given so much energy into this and it was clearly so invested in Naito's journey, that happy ending. But at
the same time,
it's both things. They could have done this at New Year's Dash, and maybe they would have also sold out New Beginning in exactly the same way they did, but they didn't, and that's what happens. So there's no real right answer. I do feel for. I get what you're saying though, Trish. Like, in some ways, it's like to be a Naito fan is just constantly being in pain and being like, when's my boy gonna get my thing? Like, get my job and or get not get my job, get his tie, get the moment for him to be the guy. The Okada fans have got theirs, the Tanahashi fans have got theirs. Yeah, hell, even the Omega fans got theirs at Dominion in 2018. At that point, and sooner or later it'll be the Hangman fans have got his moment. But the Naito fans, there's always pain. And I do feel for that, wanting to have that moment. Like you say, Tanahashi got at the end of this one. They didn't end up trying to build something off the back of that. Although they did for Tsuji. So they clearly thought it was a great idea.
The Tsuji one, Tsuji is just a complete repeat of what they did with Naito.
Yeah.
The double dome dash thing has just been reincarnated into this thing. It also had a very choppy way of getting there.
Yeah.
But then, from the way that they told that story to the attack to him talking about wanting to defend belts separately, which is something Naito wanted to do, but they didn't do. The whole thing is just a complete copy. And I think when you look at the post-match attack and when you look at the thing like that, it's a representation that wrestling isn't a end of season thing. You don't have that end of season and then nothing for 6 months. It's the next day. We always have the next day. And when you look at that attack with the Kenta one, as much as we wanted that moment for Naito as that character and for the LIJ characters and the relationship between them, you do that because you're trying to protect that babyface. So that babyface isn't, I've got my moment and that's it. You want them to run on in as a champion with still the same kind of energy behind them. And I mean, maybe you can achieve both. I guess you could look at the other way, look at someone like, Shockwave like Goto and see that celebration and how that kind of transferred into his reign going forward and how that carried some energy in Japan and especially box office. But the whole idea is to protect the babyface so they keep that kind of energy for longer that you had in the chase. So I can see the argument behind it. Going back now, I have no issues with it. I look at it and I just I just think he got you look at the rest of it at that moment, and it's kind of very Naito to not have it be completely perfect.
Yeah.
And there's something about that now as I look back, and especially now as his career is, I wouldn't say winding down, but physically winding down for sure. But as I look back on it now, it's like, would I have liked it to be perfect? Sure. But should it have been perfect? Well, it's Tetsuya Naito. So probably not.
And last thing I'll say about it is the beatdown that Kenta does is really good, really well executed. Like, he flies in, he kicks the bejesus out of him. Like, this is Kenta on his absolute best behavior. And why wouldn't he be? He's getting like one of the biggest moments of his career. Yeah.
It's the fastest Kenta's worked in like a decade, I think.
Yeah. Let's look a little bit beyond the immediate aftermath of the match. 3 months after this match happened, the world would shut down. Wrestling would be done in empty arenas. It would be 3 years until at Wrestle Kingdom 17 in January 23 that Japanese crowds would be allowed to cheer properly again. I feel like it wasn't even until this year that we would see, well, it definitely wasn't until this year that we would see the Tokyo Dome as full again, as it was that night in 2020. Am I right in saying, Trish, that this wasn't just the end of a chapter of Naito's story, but it was the end of a chapter for New Japan Pro Wrestling's story?
Yeah, because I don't think they ever carried the same energy post-COVID as they did going in. And that is it's a timeline thing, right? Because if you look at the start of 2020, they were still felt like a real hot product. That New Beginning show was huge business, but also had just an incredible last 3-4 matches. They had that hour-long stretch where you had Suzuki and John Moxley, which was just insane. And then you had the Dragon Lee Hiromu Takahashi match. I think I actually came before, which was
whatever happened to that Dragon Lee guy.
Well, that was the one where he wanted to change his name to Ruli, and Hiromu just ruined it. Sang the Dragon Lee song for 15 minutes at the press conference, and they were like, "Oh fuck, well that ain't working." And then you had the very bloody, because Naito got caught and just bleeding everywhere match with him and Kenta. And you were going to go straight into the anniversary show at Budokan, sold out Budokan, which was going to be him and Hiromu. And, it could have rolled. So it's one of those things where, again, it could have been different if COVID hadn't happened. And COVID was such a major impact on them as a business, in terms of momentum, and because of how much energy they get from the fans in terms of presentation of their product, it did feel like a major hit. So maybe it could have been different. But now when you look back, I think most people will look back at the Okada-Naito match as the closing of that kind of era, the culmination of so many stories. In a way, it's a combination of not just Naito's story, but that kind of growth period in the 2010s for New Japan, and how much of it was kind of around these characters that they brought in, because it's kind of like the combination of that generation essentially in that story. And it becomes more so because maybe the people that were coming up after that we thought would bring things on or change things, that kind of really hasn't happened. So we kind of sit with that moment maybe till this year, maybe to Tanahashi's retirement feels like the last kind of cornerstone of that generation, and we're yet to see anything kind of replace it. So now we go back to that moment more and more as a focal point.
Yeah, and there was almost like a lost generation in there, which I think was really evident when you saw the people coming out from AEW to give Tanahashi his flowers at the end, literally. Kota Ibushi, who was there, but through injuries and everything that went down, he sort of disappeared off the scene. Obviously, Omega left to do AEW. Then later on, Jay White left, Will Ospreay left, and they would have been the people bridging the gap at the top of the ladder to the new generation. But they weren't there. And as you said, like, it was the COVID. It wasn't just that they had the fans couldn't cheer. It was for how long as well. Like, I'd forgotten how long that they had clap crowds for. And, I remember watching those clap matches, and some of them were really good. There's some really good stuff hidden in there, but it's not the same. And I'd forgotten how long it was between when they sort of came back in those empty arena shows to when they fully allowed crowds to like let rip. January 2023, like it was wrestling in America and everywhere else in the world had opened up fully for years at that point. So, you know, the energy just wasn't there for so long. And, you know, you felt that in the promotion and you felt that in the wrestlers and their performances. And you have to think as the years went on for the wrestlers, it was, you know, it really dragged as well. So, yeah, tough one there, but it sort of just, if anything, it puts an exclamation mark on this match with, you know, how big it feels. I said gravitas before and how important it feels. Like it almost puts an exclamation mark on it in terms of how big it was and how big it feels as like an important fixture in the history of New Japan, which sort of brings me to like my next question I wanted to raise. Where does this rate for you in terms of Tokyo Dome main events?
Oh God, look, from a personal perspective, I don't think there's anything that I'd ever compare to it because of my investment. And sometimes, yeah, we try and be analysts, so we try and be kind of neutral on things, so we can judge things. And at the end of the day, you can't. Like you judge off. You can look at how great the in-ring action is. You can look at how the presentation is. You can look at how the timing, the pacing, all those things. But at the end of the thing that will stick with you, for me especially, is how memorable was it, and how invested were you? How did you feel in that moment? And I've never felt like that with anything else in New Japan because of how much it was built to it, how much I've attached to that character. So for me, yeah, it is the Tokyo Dome main event. And this year maybe running close, right? Because the emotion of that was different, but it held so many similar feelings because you kept thinking back on Tanahashi's career and how, you know, you relate to him as a character and how you lived and died with him in so many moments. And it's the same thing here. But this one, for me, is slightly different just because they're at their peak. They're at their physical peak. They're at their kind of in-ring storytelling peak. And that crowd, like the noise of that crowd from beginning to end to, yeah, especially that strike exchange. And then, yeah, the way that they even start celebrating before he's even hit the Destino. Yeah, it's all about investment for me and being memorable, and nothing's going to clear that current because I don't have that investment in another wrestler in New Japan like I did with that. But yeah, so yeah, it's for me it will sit at the top. For others, it might be something different, but it all just depends on what you've enjoyed in pro wrestling and what you've attached yourself to.
Yeah, I wasn't on the ride for the Tanahashi Okada matches. So I've only watched those in retrospect. So, you know, like I really appreciate them and think they're amazing, but I just wasn't emotionally engaged in that story as in the way that you are when you're watching something in real time. So I can't, you know, as much as I really like, you know, Wrestle Kingdom 10 particularly, you know, I can't say that one matches up to this. And the Omega Okada match will always have a special place in my heart because it sort of really blew the doors open in my brain as to what wrestling could be. This was like the first New Japan match I'd watched, I think ever, maybe. I maybe had watched something beforehand, but I can't remember what it was. The Omega Okada just blew the doors open in my mind. So that will always have to have a special place in my heart. But yeah, you're right. Like the emotion in this match is just absolutely off the charts. And I wasn't even a big Tetsuya Naito fan, but you just get swept up in these things, right? Like you know the story and you let yourself get invested in it, and the crowd carries you along, and the emotions and the performances carries you along. This year's one has to be close, right? Like I don't know. It's hard to split them, and there's a lot of similarities, right? Because you've got the Okada across the ring from someone the crowd really, really wants to win. And you've got the crowd super invested. You've got the commentary like just going crazy. You've got the performers just at the peak of their powers. Somehow Tanahashi turning back the clock. I don't know what they injected him with beforehand, but God, it worked. It has to be right up there for me.
And it's part of it is just playing, very simple way into protagonist and antagonist roles, and doing everything and building everything around that. And it's, the things that work really well here are not doing, exception of the poison runner, doing crazy stupid things. It's all about pacing changes and really simple things to get you behind the kind of protagonist, behind the babyface. And that's the same in those two matches. That's why you can compare them so similarly, because that's what they do so well. I said it this year when during the Aaron War v4 match, and I shook our friend Tim of Joshing around, and I'm like, wrestling can be so simple. It can be so simple, and when it is, and when they get it right, there's nothing like it.
I remember having discussions with people after this about is it Kazuchika Okada, to your point about being being simple, is it what was the best match? Was it Okada versus Ibushi, or was it Okada versus Naito? And to me it was like, is so clearly Kazuchika Okada versus Tetsuya Naito. But some people really loved that Ibushi match, and that was much more of like the, I guess, for lack of a better term, like the strong style work rate sort of, this is what New Japan's become known for. And Meltzer rated that one 5.5. He rated the Naito match 5 stars. Like,
Naito is never going to get the kind of the critic kind of praise in the same way like an Ibushi or an Omega would, because it's a different type of work. And he's fully capable at that point. He was fully capable of doing those sort of things. That's why
he's done it with Omega. He's done those matches with Omega.
But it's a different type of emotion. You're going for a different thing. And I think that's why some people find it so hard to look at it and think, okay, we think Ibushi's this better wrestler. We think Omega's this better wrestler. We think whoever's this better wrestler. Why is this guy the guy that they pay tickets to see? Why is this guy the guy they go and buy the shirts and do the things? Why? Because I don't see it, because he's not like that, but it's because he's not like that. This is a Suzuki-ism, isn't it? Because he's imperfect in a sense is what makes him so connectable, and the reason why you have this real intense relationship with LIJ fans and Tetsuya Naito in a way that you don't maybe have with Ibushi, or you don't maybe have with Okada.
This sort of brings me to my next thing that I wanted to talk about. And this will be the last thing we talk about, Trish. Thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous, but this is going to be the last thing we talk about.
Thank you so much for staying up. I know time differences are hard.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I get energy from doing this. I think an interesting comparison to make, and a thing that I want to reflect on is like, how has this influenced AEW? What can we see in AEW that sort of is a reflection of this? And I think there's one really clear thing.
Oh God,
Naito and Hangman, like it seems so clear. Like the odysseys to get there, the pain, the ups and downs, the insecurity, the failure, especially the failure, and using and leveraging that failure as a wrestler, leveraging that failure creatively. It's one thing. Every wrestler probably thinks that they can book an incredible story to them, like running up and becoming champion. But what wrestler can create a compelling story of them failing to become champion? Like that's almost a true test, right? Like, and that's something that Hangman, I think, has excelled at. Like his at his most compelling is when he fails, or is when he is like in the doldrums, when he is letting things get in his mind and he is going crazy because he wants something so badly and he can't get it. And I can see those parallels so clearly. And I would love to know if Hangman has thought about watching Tetsuya Naito, if he's thought about that, and if this has influenced him any way. I know that, like, of course you can just look at the booking and like the long-term storytelling that this is, which I think AEW does a lot. And it seems, of course with Hangman seems to be doing that with Will Ospreay as well, like a long journey towards the title, a long trek. But that theme of creativity around like failure is something that I that really sort of came out when I was thinking about what are the things that I've loved in AEW that I've sort of see reflected in this match and the build to this match, particularly in the story of this match.
It's an interesting one. Maybe that's worth a question. From as far as generally I'm aware with Paige, he is very much of his own kind of construct and how he thinks about it. But the mentality.
Well, he got in trouble for that once, right? Didn't he? When he was at that wrestling school, and he said, he was like, "No, you trust yourself." Yeah.
Well, there's loads of interesting things.
Sorry, I'm distracting now. I just can't help myself.
No, yeah, our friend picks his video actually, and he's been part of Paige's kind of career or involved with like independence with him for
really
since he started. So it's his video, but some other things that never got out from that one that are quite funny too. But anyway,
sorry, I derailed then, Trish.
It's funny, isn't it? No, but his mentality is kind of not kind of copying others, but the way that they deal with it and the way that they're kind of bringing this into their storytelling is, I think, a few things. I think it's a recognition that the imperfect babyface, especially in this modern era, is perhaps a way to garner more fan support than just having someone win all the time. And you can argue that. I mean, we probably don't. Everything is very heel heavy in general in wrestling in 25, 26. But so you need something, because the heels kind of use a lot of the babyface tricks these days in particular. You need something that's going to distinguish the babyface to allow people to come on a journey with you, and especially when you're doing like weekly television, right? Because you can have a great match on a pay-per-view or something, but it's just it's over the next day. And people don't remember things in the way that they did previously. So as we talked about, with emotional investment with this match, it's like you have to have something that gets people emotionally invested now in a character to want them to see that combination, to see that journey, rather than just, here's a great match, let's stick it on TV or stick it on pay-per-view. So that's where these journeys and these kind of characters are much more important, especially for baby faces, than what they were, maybe in the same way 10, 20 years ago. But the thing with him, with Paige and with Naito is having that patience to execute this sort of thing, and then being able to show your insecurities. It's very, very easy to play a character that's very strong, that never has those sort of insecurities, always comes out on top, or those sort of things. It's a lot more challenging to be somebody who fails, someone who doesn't win in those big moments. How does that affect your brand? Because as a wrestler, your brand is the most important thing. Will people stop connecting with you because they see you as essentially a loser? Will they be willing to come on that journey with you? Will they feel that you can still get back to the top? Will they invest in you in a way that they won't others, that gives you leverage, even though you are losing essentially, while other people are winning? And that's a test. I think it's a mental test of the person behind the character as well, to have that sort of patience and that belief, and to put so much into their work when they're not essentially at the very, very top. They're not the focal point of a promotion. But it allows you to build up to have these sort of moments. And naturally, these sort of moments will do better business than the ones that are just kind of thrown out there between winners, to be honest. That's what we've seen in AEW. That's what we saw in that last era in New Japan in some senses. So it's such a challenge, and I was speaking to someone about something similar this week, but it's such a challenge to kind of delay, because that we live in a world of kind of instant gratification, especially now, but the way that you get those real big moments or those real big emotional feelings is by delaying until the right moment. And you can see that with the way that people connect to Paige and the way that people connect to Naito, the way I connect to Naito, comes from their kind of dedication to those small moments, to those small little bits in their character story, to keeping things on a path, to always kind of having a path. It doesn't feel disjointed. It always feels like there's reasoning or something behind them that you can connect to. And that's what keeps you coming back, rather than kind of falling away when they're not at the top of the card, or they're not doing something that essentially is like the focal point. So yeah, it's just a lot of patience, and it's something for wrestlers to learn from for sure. You know, it's not, you don't want everybody to be doing this. We don't need everybody to have a Naito story, a Hangman story. But if you have the people that are able to do this, that they're able to emotionally kind of, I was going to say manipulate, that's wrong, isn't it? Sounds wrong. But yeah, essentially, you know, who are able to build a connection with the crowd in this way, then fair play to them, because it's not easy. It's not simple. It's not something everybody can do. And it means having to battle with not being the winner all the time. You're going to be losing more often than not, and not everybody can cope with that.
Yeah, I think the thing that you just said that just jumped out at me is like that logical progression of a character, that logical development of one step to another, so that even though, you know, Naito, the incomparable, the ungovernable Naito, is a very different proposition to Naito, the Stardust Genius. But you can see the steps that happened to get there, in the same way that, like, Hangman, this crazy demented guy who's wants to drink Swerve Strickland's blood, is so different to Hangman Page, the loving, supporting babyface who gets behind this group of losers, for lack of a better term, the Dark Order, and decides he wants to be friends with them and hang out with them and bond with them. You know, they're two very different characters. Not different characters. They're two very different parts of this character, but you see the logical progression as they go there. And I think that's something that I'm not going to say Hangman is the first person to do it, right? Because he's not. But I think it's a relatively new thing that wrestlers think about in depth. I really like it, because particularly the way that we watch wrestling now, it's more television driven, and it's thinking about it more in a way that is like, this is a TV show, and this is the way my character is going to progress through the episodes of this TV show. And when you connect with a character that's doing that, it's really, you know, it really sucks you in. And that's why Naito has such a rabid fan base, and it's why Hangman has such a rabid fan base. You know, people are a bit derisive of it, but it's actually a good thing that people always get really upset when stuff happens to Hangman. Like, that's a great problem to have, because you've got a wrestler who people live and die with, and they ride for him, and they ride hard. They're not going to get distracted by the next new recruit to come in, because they've found their man, and they've ridden so many ups and downs with him that, like, they're bonded to it. Like, this is their guy, and they want to see it through. And that's a great thing to have in wrestling, for the wrestler particularly, because, you know, if you've got a fan base like that, you're always going to have somewhere you can wrestle and make money. And for a promoter to have, because you've got someone on your roster that will always be able to engage the crowd, which is what you've got to be doing if you're a promoter of wrestling. So, look, that's the biggest thing that sort of I got out of this. Is there anything else that sticks out to you that sort of relates between this match itself and what we've seen in AEW going over the years?
I think that's probably the biggest comparable. I think when you look at how Page won the title in July last year, and how they kind of built that match up, and how it was a culmination, and there were so many kind of clever little things in that. There's quite a similar feeling. Maybe not quite the same, but it's similar. And then just influence on how they have on how things are produced, shot. It's like, I think for me, like, when you look at New Japan production for big events, the biggest thing was it provided an alternative to kind of the very WWE staging and shooting, and this is how it has to be. And when you look at New Japan, like, it's like, no, you can feel it, it's superior. And you can feel more of the influences on AEW's Big Show kind of presentation in recent years. And so that is something that holds over as well. But yeah, I think the thing with Naito that I guess you may look at is that we look at this as such a culmination point of his journey, and he really didn't as much as you had things, you have to deal with the kind of the fallout of LIJ afterwards, and eventually, he did the tag run with Hiromu and that thing, and it's hard to look at because of the way his physical body was kind of broken. But what he was maybe unable to do was have something go after that arc. He was in that point. He was, I'm a top guy now, the top guy arguably for 23, 24, but it's like he didn't have that kind of progressive movement after that so much. And even when it came to like LIJ, with the evil turn, I think Hiromu was far more angry about it than Naito was. So it's a case of, I guess that's the next thing that you look at is you have this journey, you culminate it. What's next? What can you do after you've done this massive, huge arc to kind of not just, because he maintained his popularity, he maintained his character, but how do you then keep them so you have that sort of motion again? Can you do that? I guess that's the next biggest challenge. Maybe that's something for Paige to take on. We'll see. Next
well, we've seen him do it before.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'll see.
After 2021, yeah.
Sure, and I'm sure we're going to see something similar coming up. But yeah, so that's kind of that big thing, which is the question mark over what happened with Naito. And again, COVID has a big impact on that. But it doesn't take away from the execution of what they did here and how, his unwillingness to kind of not give in when he was rejected. He could have easily just gone and been stubborn, and I'm going to keep trying to do the same things I've been doing, and I'm not going to even try and learn anywhere. I'm not going to take a break. I'm just going to, and you don't have this career, you don't have this journey, you don't have this story. But his willingness to step back and go, actually, I need to do something different. That's real important here, because not everybody has the capacity to do that, and that's where you end up with, like, I don't know, Cody Rhodes in 2021. In 20, because you're not willing to embrace it or look at doing something different. And in the end, for him, he needed a change of scenery and somewhere where that character would be more embraced. Whereas for Naito, he didn't have a change of scenery in terms of a permanent one. So he needed to find the tools and find the things that would actually get him over with that audience that have rejected him so heavily in 2014. And he did it. And he did it by becoming the coolest motherfucker in the company.
To your point about production, I wish AEW would lean way more into the New Japan elements of production.
Sure.
I would get rid of the hard cam. I hate the hard cam. I don't like it. I would shoot everything from ringside at low angle shots. The only time I feel like they've truly got close to New Japan is one match, and that was Hangman versus Ospreay at Double or Nothing. And for whatever reason, they decided to light that differently and shoot that differently. And that's the only time I felt like they've touched big match New Japan. And I say that, but like sometimes New Japan has the hard cam and stuff because not every match is in the Tokyo Dome or in, Osaka Joe Hall or the Sumo Hall or the Budokan, where they've got like such beautiful arenas to wrestle in and to work with. Sometimes they have, some pretty ordinary looking places, and they have the hard cam and they do shoot it more like Western wrestling. But yeah, I think New Japan is the standard for wrestling and has been for a long, long time. Wrestling production, particularly the way they shoot it. I wish AEW would do that rather than the Western style, which I don't think suits AEW, particularly because AEW has got smaller wrestlers generally, and I think the low angle shots make the smaller wrestlers look bigger and more important, and emphasizes makes them look better than the hard angle shot. And I think particularly Kenny Omega, you hear like the Kenny Omega in Japan thing, I think he has been most affected by the change in production style as anyone. He just looks so different in the hard cam and without those long stable shots that New Japan do.
It's a good point. I never really thought about it with Kenny, but yeah, Kenny is definitely the one who feels the most different, and he can have those sorts of magic elements occasionally in AEW. But I think it's also just being exposed to kind of weekly television as well.
True, yeah.
That you don't have. It's a different type of focus and look, and they have the pressures obviously of the the network as well, who have an expectation of what they think American wrestling should look like. And unfortunately,
they can't just run a Road 2. They also, and they can't just run a Road 2 show with a bunch of tag matches every week.
No, they tried that in last autumn, mainly doing kind of the tag matches, Road 2s, and it didn't really work. You can see as they go into this spring where they're doing more of the big name singles matches, how much that kind of energizes TV. So yeah, TV's difficult, weekly TV is difficult, but yeah, there's definitely things that they could incorporate more from New Japan production that would help them to feel kind of more of an alternative. But it is difficult in that sense for sure.
Trish, I could speak for hours about how I would fix wrestling TV and probably lose hundreds of millions of dollars for the company that implements my ideas. But we don't have that time. We do need to call it a day at some point. I really appreciate having you on. As I said up top, I think you have done amazing stuff for this network. It's been awesome to just see, the amount of energy that you poured into it. And yeah, I'm so glad to be back, and thank you for jumping on for my first podcast back. Feels like I've been through a match. I'm gonna have to go and have a cigarette and lie down after this. But yeah, look, I just appreciate having you on and jumping back in. And if you like, jump in now and plug whatever you feel like plugging right now.
I'm an awful plugger, but no, thank you, Sam, very much for having me. It's great to look. You just give me a couple hours to talk about Tetsuya Naito. I'm not going to turn that down. But no, it's great to be part of the Social Suplex Network. Social Suplex newsletter out kind of every month. We changed the format a little bit to make it more manageable because it's all done by people who have other jobs, do other things, but we give kind of the best to me, the best global coverage of wrestling that's available out there and for free. So yeah, we have an incredible team. We have an incredible team at Social Suplex. This is a really kind of building network that keeps moving forward, and we hope to continue to do in 2026. And that's with yourself, with Rich, with James, with Jeremy, with Josh, with everybody that's on our network, Imp, and yeah, everybody else. It's just it's a great thing to be part of, and yeah, I'm just going to praise it because I'm not good at promoting anything else, and that's all I want to promote. So, but no, thank you very much for having me and allowing us to just discuss everything of Tetsuya Naito's journey. And sometimes, I don't go back and watch a huge amount. Maybe I should go back and watch more, because I went back and watching some of these matches, and especially even just watching this stuff in like 2016 with the heel turn and for that kind of title win over Okada. Just you forget how great some of this stuff was and how it made you feel, and it's great to reconnect. So thank you for that as well.
I agree. Going back and watching matches that you enjoyed in the past is a great idea. And if you've enjoyed listening to this and you want to get ahead of next week's episode, why don't you? We are staying in New Japan. I promise that this is not just going to be a podcast of me now watching a bunch of New Japan matches. We are going to go other places, but next week we are continuing in New Japan, and we'll be looking at the Golden Lovers versus the Young Bucks from 2018, a match which has some very direct links to things that happened in AEW later on, a year or so later, 2 years later. But yeah, look, if you want to get ahead of things, why not flash some cash out, jump on New Japan World. You can watch this match again, and you can then get ahead of time and watch that. That's going to be me and Imp doing that in a fortnight's time. I think I might have said next week. I'm doing this thing fortnightly. I hope I haven't got too rusty doing this podcast, but for those of you who have stuck around, I really appreciate it. Still following the podcast, still being subscribed. I'm not really active on social media anymore, so look, you're probably not going to find me anywhere, but if you do want to reach out to me, the Social Suplex Discord, I'm always in there. I'm always checking the Discord, and I hope that you can jump into the AEW Match Guide channel. Let me know what you thought of this. Match, your thoughts around Tetsuya Naito, your thoughts around this Wrestle Kingdom match, and the build to it, the story, what we've been talking about for the last 2 hours. Let us know your thoughts there. Trish will be in there. She's always in the Discord as well. So that's the best place. Yeah. Your thread is out of control. You're absolutely out of control. You cannot keep up with that thing. But it's also a great place to just interact with fans who are engaged, fans who are thinking about things thoroughly, who are embracing things, who are coming in good faith, who want to have good conversations most of the time. And we do, curate it so that I've got a no dickheads policy essentially. The only dickheads are the presenters. They're the only people that are allowed to be dickheads. Look, so come and join the Social Suplex Discord. I'd love to see you in there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this match. We'd love to talk more about it, because there's plenty more to dig into. Make sure you check out all of the other podcasts on the network as well. As I said, up top, we've got One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Tunnel Talk, Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast, Wrestle Art with Chris Sings, Imps AEW Adventures, and Joshing Around, and also the Social Suplex newsletter. Thanks again for joining me, Trish. Thank you for everyone who's stuck with the podcast and is still listening all these years later. I'm really excited about this 4th season of the podcast, and I can't wait to have you all listening in and joining me on this journey too. I will see you in a fortnight's time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the AEW Match Guide podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then you can subscribe on the podcast app of your choice so you never miss an episode. Also, feel free to let me know on Twitter at Sir_Samuel. I'd love to hear from you. The AEW Match Guide podcast is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where you can find many other fantastic podcasts discussing not just AEW, but all parts of the world of professional wrestling. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Sam Brown.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.